Many times, the videos on this channel are theoretical. I talk about strategy and theory. Today's video instead is going to be practical. My PF2E slash Starfinder 2E group met up this weekend. We rented a house for the weekend so that we could all get together in one place, kind of in the middle of where we all live. And we had our session 0 for the next campaign. And when we started talking about our character ideas, 3 different people wanted to play Divine Casters, and I had this really well flushed out character that I was set on playing, and then I realized I need to change if we want a balanced party. So today, I am going to show you the exact character ideas that everyone in my party was planning on playing, and kind of teach through practical example how can you build a good party? How can you change your character to better suit the needs of your party? Let's get into it. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher aka Thraben you here for another Pathfinder 2E slash Starfinder 2E video, and welcome to Finish This Party! Before we get started here, let me just say that this channel is around because of the support of all of you, so thank you for that. If you are in the financial position to support me, please consider becoming a YouTube member. You will get early access to all of my videos, and more on this later this month, but I'm going to be taking some big expenses over the summer for this channel to try to bring you all some really cool first look content at some stuff. And if you're not in the position to support me financially, that's fine. But maybe click that subscribe button and make those numbers go up. It makes me look much more appealing to people like sponsors. And if you are in a position to consider sponsoring a video for the channel, I'm not too hard to find. So today is an interactive lesson, and at a couple of points throughout the video, I might ask you to pause to gather your own thoughts before I share my own thoughts. I'm going to begin by showing you the general character ideas for all of the party members of my upcoming party, and we're going to use that to talk about the weaknesses of this specific party, and then we're going to think about what character could I play instead to flush out this party better and make it so that we're going to survive what is going to be a very difficult campaign. And I say that because my GM has specifically told us that this is a dragon hunting campaign. And dragons are notoriously tough creatures in Pathfinder 2E. They punch above their weight in terms of difficulty. And this is going to be essentially a PF2E traditional fantasy setting. However, some 200 years ago, one spaceship did crash on the planet, bringing a very limited amount of Starfinder 2E tech to the planet. So we're very much on wagons and physical ships that are rowed or have sails sort of technology for the most part, but you can maybe find some grenades or some Starfinder weapons and equipment if you want them. That's the sort of technology level that we're at. Most of the normies are living in a fantasy setting. There are very few things that are off the table in terms of things like rarity or character creation options, although the GM has specifically banned the jetpack. In a campaign with a bunch of flying dragons, it seems like everyone having jetpacks would just make things a little bit too easy. And in terms of level, we're going to be starting off at level 5, playing a free archetype game. So without further ado, let's introduce our cast. Player 1 is playing a Superstition Barbarian with the Fighter archetype so that they can pick up Reactive Strike at level 4 rather than having to wait for our first level up at 6. They're going to have a 2-handed reach weapon, and as a strength-based martial with another strength-based martial archetype, their out-of-combat utility is going to be extremely low. They are going to hit relatively hard. They're going to be a little bit resistant to magic, but again, utility is going to be low. Player 2 is an Envoy with the Space Pirate archetype. If you are not familiar with the Envoy, they are sort of like Starfinder 2E's Rogue. They are a charisma-based skill monkey that can command their allies and sort of move them around or give them small buffs. The Space Pirate archetype is going to mean that they are playing with 1 melee weapon and 1 ranged weapon, utilizing the broadside charge ability down below, which allows you to shoot someone, then run up to them, then slash them without having map get involved, which is pretty darn good. They are going to be a very high out-of-combat utility, as like rogues, envoys get a ton of skill trainings and skill increases, and their high charisma is going to make them a reasonable face character as well. Next up, we have a Mystic with the Rogue archetype. So this is a wisdom-based divine caster that has spontaneous spell slots and a whopping 4 spell slots per level. This is going to be a low HP character, and we know just as a general trend that low-level divine casters often struggle with damage output. Their buff things are going to be great even at this level, but in terms of damage output, it really is when you start getting 4th level spells that I feel like the divine list really starts picking up. The Mystic is going to have a high healing capacity, in addition to 4 spell slots per level, and heal as a signature spell. You also have a vitality network that gives you a replenishable pool of single action healing. This character is going to be a character with medium out-of-combat utility, as wisdom and dexterity-based skills are probably going to be covered, but you don't get any sort of insane skill trainings, at least not yet. The rogue archetype is going to give a few extra skill trainings, and once you hit level 8, you can really start ramping up your out-of-combat utility by getting to move some extra skills to expert and or master. Next up, we have a Blight Oracle with the Beastmaster archetype. So this is a Charisma Divine Spontaneous Caster that's going to have 4 spell slots per level like our Mystic, and also have Cursebound actions. One of the things that makes Oracles kind of strong is that they have 3 pools of things they care about. They have their spell slots, they have their focus points, and then they have their Cursebound actions as well. This is going to be a character that also has low HP. I think this character does not have optimal AC, so this is going to be low AC as well. And like our Mystic, they are probably going to struggle with damage output, at least early on. And this is our 2nd Divine Caster in the party. This is a character that will have medium healing capacity. They will have heal as a signature spell, but probably no other healing. And for flavor-based reasons, they are taking a little sunflower, a Sundaflora companion, which is going to be another thing that has hit points on the map, which is pretty useful. This is a character that I would categorize as pretty suboptimal. They are going to have narrow out-of-combat utility. They were so lacking on skill trainings that they took the untrained improvisation feat to make it so that they have a decent chance at succeeding at a bunch of their actions. This one was built on vibes rather than on power level. And then the character that I intended to play was a melee animist. This is something that I have played around with a lot on this channel and that I think is very fun. And I had drafted up a new build with a guardian archetype. And my idea was to max out my strength and my wisdom and really be a mixed caster. I wasn't going to have as many spell slots as my peers, but I was going to end up having very high HP and very high effective AC, due to the reactive shield feat, which lets you, as a reaction, raise your shield. And my plan was to use athletics maneuvers and the action denial apparitions that can do things like confuse enemies to just play a support role that can be on the front line. And I was hoping to have very strong out-of-combat utility by just having the absolute ton of lores that an animist brings to the table. So here's everything that we have going on in this party. So we have 1 dedicated melee frontliner. We have 1 charisma-based mixed fighter that can be in melee or operate at ranged. We have essentially a dedicated healer, and it was a shadow mystic, by the way. We have a caster with a companion, and then a caster that was intending on mostly doing action denial stuff. And when I saw this party composition, internally, I went, uh-oh, this is bad. So if you want to play along, I would like you to pause the video here and try to determine what you think this party's weaknesses are going to end up being. And as I've obviously alluded to, 3 of them being divine casters is probably going to be a problem, but I think there's some other stuff here. So if you want to think it through for yourself, pause here. Otherwise, I'm going to start explaining now. This is not my first party building video on this channel. I did a theoretical video where I talked about this chart. This was something that I drafted up to kind of say, hey, these are some things that you might be thinking about in terms of party composition. And while I didn't get out my notes and fill out this table at the time, in just kind of thinking about the party that we were bringing to the table, I thought that we were going to have some pretty big flaws. I thought we were going to have too much overlap in terms of roles. So in thinking about this chart, this is kind of where I think we fall. Where green is we've got it covered, yellow is maybe we have some deficiencies, and red is we're really lacking in this area. And I was really worried about the damage potential of this party. That barbarian, gonna hit like a truck. The envoy is probably going to be solid and consistent, but maybe can't pump up their damage very much when you need to go Nova, as they say. There's no Magus Spell Strike style action from this party where when they really need to crank things up, they can. And in terms of area damage, this is something that the Divine list can struggle with a little bit early on, especially if you are trying to do it over all of the different saving throws. Without any sort of arcane or primal caster here, the damage types, like that is the variety that you can attack, is maybe going to be a little bit lacking. The Divine list is pretty light on reflex saves at lower level, with Inner Radiance Torrent perhaps being the go-to for many casters. We are really good at the out-of-combat stuff. The Mystic covers resourceless healing by themselves. We have a Rogue dedication as well as an Envoy, so we're going to have a ton of skill trainings. The Animist has a ton of lore. We have a bunch of characters that have access to either high dexterity, and I think both of our casters have the ability to cast invisibility. There's a lot of strengths for this party. 3 divine casters. The buffing and healing is so beyond covered. All those lores, recall knowledge is great, but the damage is going to be bad. And we can keep healing and healing and healing our way through some absolute slog of fights and maybe get over the finish line immediately. But I don't know that I want to be in a prolonged fight versus a dragon. They are absolutely horrifying. So we need to make sure that we can kill the dragon. Some other passing thoughts in terms of balance. We have 2 casters that are going to be relatively squishy. They're not quite unarmored levels of bad, but they're going to be downed pretty easily by dragons. The barbarian probably needs a flanking buddy. The envoy sometimes is going to get up in melee, but they just have a gun. They're perfectly comfortable operating from a distance as well. And if I switch classes off of the animist, I'm going to be lacking a tank in this party. And there's also going to be a vast decrease in the number of lores available to the party. So I am trying to remove some of the red and yellow from this chart without dropping off some of the other things that the party would be good at. And so this is a bit of a challenge. So this is where we have our second pause the video moment. Let's assume that I am fully willing to change what class I am playing in order to solve this party's problems. What do I play to do that? And let's go back to this chart one more time before you pause. So I need to be something that can take a hit, do damage in an area, hopefully cover multiple different types, maybe debuff, maybe target 1 or more saves, especially reflex, and maybe do some things that can help us with specific problems that we might come across. So if you want to take a minute, figure out what your thoughts are, and then I'll give you the answer that I came up with. The answer that I came up with was a melee soldier with the Knight of Galarian archetype. This is another strength martial that is going to be using a 2-handed weapon with the area fire ability. I'm going to have high HP and damage, and I'm going to have a few buff and debuff options for the party. And in terms of my non-class feat choices, I'm going to make choices that are going to optimize the number of lores that I can take to make up for the fact that this character is going to largely be maxing out on strength and con. One of the weaknesses of classes like barbarians and fighters is often that they are incredible in combat and terrible outside of combat, and I didn't want to give up all of those really cool lores that my animist was going to bring to the table. So I did my best to compensate. So I'm going to go into why I made the choices that I did, but if you just want the quick overview, I'm going to be in heavy armor with a very respectable amount of HP and a good movement speed. If you take a look at my skills here, I have a ton of different lores that I am bringing to the table. Just kind of quickly skimming through the character selection options, you'll see that I have done some things like take additional lore and give a background that is going to give extra lores as well. And I'll be rocking a Fang blade for my weapon. More on that in a minute. The first problem that I needed to cover was the idea of burst damage. And if you're not familiar with that, when you want to turn it up, can you deal more damage right now? And the soldier is going to be incredible at that. The area fire action from a melee soldier is going to allow them to make a melee strike and then area fire as 2 actions. So the area fire is going to deal your melee strike damage in a small burst area. And this is not going to apply map, so this is going to be better in most cases than just doing something like strike. You're getting very good action compression and damage here. And my weapon is going to have the boost D12 trait. At the level that we are starting at, level 5, that means that if I spend 1 action, I can add 2d12 to my next strike damage or area fire, depending on what exactly I'm doing. There's some nuance there that's beyond the scope of this video. And one of the things that was lacking in the original party was the idea of area damage. We didn't have people rocking the fireballs and lightning bolts that you might want to help out with area coverage. The soldier does an okay job at doing area damage. It is not going to be as nice as just something like a druid slinging lightning bolts and fireballs. I have a 5-foot burst option and a 10-foot burst option, and I will be installing an undermounted grenade launcher into my weapon so that I can throw a grenade at a range of 30 feet. Now, normally the grenades have a range of 70 feet, but I've got a big old 2-handed weapon here, and so that wasn't just viable. So I have checked the area damage box, maybe not as well as a caster could do it, but we have gone from having very weak area damage to reasonable area damage. And if the enemies are all clumped up in a hallway or something, a cave, we're good on area damage. As far as damage types go, I'm not something like a prepared caster that can just go and get exactly the damage type that I need. But I can install 1 grenade in my grenade launcher that I'm going to have, so if I know that I'm going up against a fire dragon of some kind, I can maybe find a grenade that will trigger its weakness. I'm expecting more grenades to be printed in the upcoming months as we get to the tech core in, I think, in the fall. Let's just say in the fall. And I expect this will get better over time. As of right now, I think there's like piercing and electric and poison. So there's a handful of options for doing something like triggering weaknesses. So this is something that has maybe improved, but is not fully covered by this character. If reflex saves were the thing that this party was lacking, I have now very much covered that, as my area fire is going to consistently be a reflex save, as is the grenades that I have. So if reflex was the weakness, and spells like, say, Calm can cover the will saves, and the fortitude saves are more than covered by some of the things that our party has, like, say, Bone Shaker, I think we're okay on saving throws. The area fire of a soldier has the ability to debuff enemies. So while I am doing this highly concentrated burst damage, I also will be doing a limited debuff. And notably, suppressed, the condition that the area fire can hand out, is a circumstance penalty. So if my envoy is going to go around yelling at people and demoralizing them and giving them the frightened condition, that is a status penalty. So The Envoy can give a status penalty, while I give a circumstance penalty, and so those things are going to stack. And, this is no synesthesia from the occult list or anything like that, but given the other coverage that I am already doing, this is pretty nice. There were also some specific problems that we might try to solve with my character. And one of those is the fact that we've got two squishy casters, and we want to protect them. In Pathfinder 2E, that often means something like a guardian or a champion for their very coveted and powerful reactions. The Knight of Galarian Dedication gives a very nice action that can help protect my entire party at the cost of a single action, which honestly is kind of wild. Note that if you are looking for this on Path Builder, it is instead called Knight of the Lost World. So for a single action, I can give my entire party a force field with 14 hit points that replenishes 2 hit points on my turn. It's not as good as a real force field that you could buy, but as a single action protection spell, this is honestly incredible. This is going to be a once per battle thing, as the allies are then immune to this effect for 1 hour afterwards, but this is a very large amount of protection. And if I know that we are going to be doing tough combats that involve fighting a lot of dragons, I want every edge that I can get for my party members. And if I can keep my nice squishy friends up, they can spam heal spells and other buff spells to keep the entire party strong and able to face the tough obstacles that are ahead. One of my concerns about not playing my Animist was that the party was going to miss out on a lot of the lores that the Animist was bringing to the table. Well, by sacrificing a couple of my skill feats and ancestry feats, I was able to get a whopping 6 lores onto this character, 5 of which I would consider strongly relevant to the campaign setting. 2 of these are scaling lores, as the additional lore feat can keep scaling up and up and up and up and up as you level up. And the Animist was supposed to be the party's tank, conceptually. It was going to have the reactive shield feat to, I think, effectively have a 27 AC at level 5, which is very, very good. That was a character in heavy armor with a tower shield that they could snap up. And while I'll be missing out on that higher AC, I will have much higher damage. I have this force field, I have a reaction that can give me some temporary hit points, and now as the soldier is a con-based class, as far as its key ability score goes, I'm going to have a ton of hit points. I'm going to end up with more than my melee animist that already, honestly, had a ton of hit points. So now let's go back to that chart. So this is where I think we have ended up after I switched characters. I think our damage has improved a lot. I think that burst damage went from being totally deficient to absolutely fine and covered. I think our area damage improved and our damage types improved. I don't think they're full-on optimal, as if we had, say, a primal caster in the party, but I think this is much better. And I think the soldier is going to end up giving more burst damage and more consistent damage to the party than something like a druid or another primal caster might. I think the debuff has fully gone up to green, as the circumstance penalty of suppressed is going to stack with the status penalty of frightened. So I think that's great. I'm going to leave specific problems at yellow. I think that overall, the chance that I can cover a problem that I need to cover, given all the party members we have, is pretty good. But the Animist is pretty great at covering specific problems. As a partially prepared caster, they can change out their spells every day, and they can change out their apparitions to be better against specific problems. I don't think we are, down to the red in this category. I don't think we have gone up any from where the Animist was either, though. And I think the other party members did a really good job of already covering the out-of-combat utility. So given that I have not let our lore stuff get more deficient, we already have multiple charisma-based and dexterity-based stuff, folks who can cover this stuff. I think we are okay now in combat in terms of damage, in combat in terms of utility and out of combat in terms of utility. And I think by taking the sacrifice of playing the character that I had intended on playing and wanted to play and doing something that is instead going to cover our roles a little bit better, I think we've got a better chance of survival versus the pile of dragons that my GM wants to throw at us. I've been told there are 8 different dragons that we are going to be fighting, and that doesn't count the little lieutenants and such that we're going to see along the way. So with that, I ask, do you think something else would have covered the party roles better? If so, please throw those down in the comments below, and I would very, very much appreciate reading the alternative thoughts. I think I found a lot of really cool things for building this character. So for example, the Fated Rival background was something that I didn't know about until 2 or 3 days ago. And I'm going to have one of my fellow party members be my rival so that when I am around them, I have a +1 circumstance bonus to attack rolls and damage, which, by the way, is going to stack with the status bonus I get from my envoy going, get him. So that is going to be quite nice. And I'm going to enjoy hitting things very, very hard while hopefully being a pretty cool out-of-combat character as well. I am flavoring my character as a ship captain and have taken sailing lore, and I've also invested in the crafting skill so that I can repair my boat when my GM decides to mercilessly attack my boat with a dragon. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and call it a day. I think for my next video, I'm going to loop back to the monk and do a bit of a monk deep dive, as a new book came out that I totally didn't pay attention to because Galactic Ancestries was so cool, but I think it might have dropped one of the new best options for monks. So I'll be back next week with that. Have a great rest of the day, folks. See ya!